What's up everybody, back at it again with another Magnum Quest video, and this will be the second video, part of the mini-series regarding factions. If this is your first time watching one of my videos, this series will be updating my old video if needed regarding faction ascension priority, while throwing in my star map faction hero priority as well. It's going to be a lot of good information. I'll be sure to give my reasoning to help you avoid making costly mistakes. Hopefully my intro doesn't glitch out like the last video. Let's get it. If you haven't seen the first video, I highly suggest checking that one out because it dealt with the Forest faction. It's going to be clickable at the end of this video. First half will be the Ascension priority, second half will be the star map priority, so there will be timestamps available in the video description if you want to jump ahead. Forest faction heroes, top 5, here we go. Number 1 is going to be Wyndon. I really love this hero. It took me a while to get to this point because early on, oh my goodness, I don't think many players really understand just how bad he was. Big shout out to all my old school beta players if you're still kicking around. I don't think there's that many because you know how awful he was. The buffs changed him completely, very strong hero. And with the Cinia trick I mentioned in his hero spotlight video, he starts swinging his staff for instant stage clears back to back. I also really like fantasy, like Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, so that's another reason. If you haven't noticed, I'm a big nerd and I love it. Don't listen to anyone who tells you what you enjoy is lame. Love what you love, be happy, that's what I always say. If you agree, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button if you haven't. That was a shameless plug right there, but cheers. Number 2 we got is Fang, one of the most reliable boss DPSers in the game in terms of investment versus damage versus survivability. He will make hitting those level 10 awakened demons easier. He will make hitting those max 60 hatred rewards on puppet bosses easier. He will make a lot of things that matter the most, like getting resources like dragon scales, barrel, runes, etc. easier. He also does raw damage, meaning no bleeds, no burns, basically dots, which means damage over time. Meaning on his ultimate, he's dealing 360% attack damage from multiple attacks. So as you level him up, improve your squad level, improve power, and hit that 100% crit chance, because he can crit, added crit damage will continue to climb his damage. If we take Hista for example, whose damage is based off bleeds, bleeds cannot crit, so crit damage is less valuable on her and her damage only climbs up so much compared to Fang's. Oh yeah, also that shield he gets after he does his ultimate damage, it's amazing. Number 3, we got Arthur. Now even though his usefulness definitely wears off as you progress through the game, I still think slapping those Ascensions on him will make your early and mid game much easier, especially with bosses like Awakened Demons, Guild Boss, you'll need him for survivability, and all the other PvE content up to a certain point. If he ever does get a little something eventually from Magnum Quest, I can see him spike in terms of popularity for the late game crowd. He's got heals, he's got defense buffs, and his ultimate with that shield can change the fight for you if he survives to do so. But just remember, that's based off his attack values, so those Ascensions really help with his stats, so it doesn't simply look like the Grandmaster Fang's arcanecard shield. Number 4, we have Cinia. Similar to Arthur in terms of those Ascension stars improve her survivability while also improving her attack buffs. Depending on what setup you run, if you do use her in one, the more stars the better because she is one of the top supports in the game. I can't stress just how much of a necessity she is in the Fortress dungeon and bosses enough. Her ultimate that distributes energy to your allies can be a bit tricky because the radius isn't that big, so positioning is key, and still sometimes your heroes won't always benefit, such as with Fang, who likes to jump around, or they get knocked around, so it just throws everything off. And then finally we have number 5, which is going to be Ekra. Now the reason I don't have her ranked higher is because she's not as important in my opinion as the others. Now is she strong? Absolutely, but Wyndon buffs intel heroes in the setup, so essentially making a weaker Ekra stronger. So I find I don't need to waste hero fodder, meaning hero fortress food like silver to gold heroes, on her before the others. I can have, for example, a 3-star Ekra put up respectable damage numbers simply due to Wyndon's buffs. However, she is a unique hero and will forever be used in late game content or whatever game modes they may introduce where the enemy scaling gets just out of control, such as the Fairhaven trial. The reason being is because of her protege skill. She picks an enemy target and steals their energy and 20% of their attack. Now 20% isn't a lot, so comparing Faction Dungeon with Fairhaven, Yeah, there's gonna be a huge difference, and the reason being the enemy's power is just ridiculous. The more attack they have, the more she steals, the more damage she does. Also, her ultimate has a heal block, which is very helpful on heavy healing enemy stages like with Arthur's, Naomi's, Aloin's, and of course she has burn AoE damage effect. Let me know down in the comments your thoughts about this list because it is literally just my opinion. I love seeing other players' perspectives because that's one of the most interesting things I can say about making content. Maybe there's something I missed, maybe there's better options. However, I do like to think I know a thing or two or three depending on the day. And now for the second half, the star map priority list. Just remember, this is just for that said faction, so that's going to be Fortress. I'm not taking into consideration any others. So Fortress faction heroes, top 5, here we go. Number 1, we have Wyndon, take straight to gold, and then when you're done bronze, you can work into either Ekra or Cinia, depending on your priorities. Very similar situation as with Fabian and Cyan with the Forest faction. I will go into more detail about this in a few. The reasons why I have Wyndon as my top Fortress intel hero is because after numerous buffs, I think it was like 2, 3, 4, who knows how many it was, the wizard is now a wizard, meaning he actually does something. So now, not only does he provide amazing buffs, such as making other intel heroes much stronger, like I said before, or buffing your heroes with the highest attack, he can also dish out serious damage himself. I wouldn't say he excels at bosses, but he can hold his own. But definitely a go-to for chapter and dungeon, maybe some PvP. Key features of his star map would be for the bronze tier. Having access to enhanced therapy this early on is quite good. However, you won't be popping this skill off as frequent as say Harry from the Wild faction when he uses his ultimate. Wyndon has 2 forms of buffs. Magical Blessing will be proccing this bronze skill. Then this one I'm not too sure about because it is a permanent buff. Magical Resonance. I don't think this one counts towards the proc, but I could be wrong. I don't really have time for testing anymore, so if anyone has tested, leave a comment down below. I would be interested in knowing about that. If only one of his skills, which would be on the slower rotation, procs this, I don't know if it's actually worth and maybe would go like Swift Victory as it allows for easier rune optimization, and we all know how difficult it is to get a good rune right now in this game. However, for now, this is what I'm using because it helps with overall team damage and survivability, and I find keeping Wyndon above 50%, depending on the heroes you're using, is quite difficult. Gold tier has quite a bit of options depending on what game mode you primarily use him for. All 3 are good in my opinion. Fire of Hatred if he is one of your main boss DPS. Domino Effect if you use him more in chapter, dungeon, PvP due to the consistency, but haven't done much testing here of what's better, this or Torrential Attack. I think they're both good, but I personally am working with Domino Effect. So based off that, you can choose what best fits your playstyle. Number 2, it's going to be Fang. Take straight to gold, and then when done bronze, you can work into, well, yeah, same situation as you will see in the Wild faction when I get to it. Really not many other valuable options. But speaking from a cost-effective mindset, save your agility tokens. Reasons why I have Fang as my top Fortress agility hero, well, for the obvious reason, he's really the only choice. Sorry Auric, but yeah, not worth. I'm not saying Auric is a bad hero, but I can count on one hand how many times I've actually used him in this game, so it's barely anything. There's just better options out there. But yeah, the reason is he's an absolute powerhouse for boss damage with much better survivability than the other agility attack type heroes due to his ultimate giving him a shield based off the damage done, and with the right setup, specifically in the Fortress dungeon with Lillian, he can get even more survivability needed to stay alive and shine in damage with resets on his skill Taio, Epiphany. Key features of his star map would be bronze tier, having access to 2 solid skills for improving damage early on. Although Fire of Hatred isn't as good as say Wild Faction Hista's gold because the stats are much better as you progress through the star map, so obviously bronze is not as good as gold, but it still does well. However, Fury of War would provide more consistent damage since it's not based off an enemy HP percentage, so when and if you use him consistently in other aspects of the game besides bosses, which typically have a lot of HP, and in this game they do have a hidden HP value, you get more out of it. Comment down below if you know what that actual value difference is. I do think I read Fury of War is better, but my primary purpose is bosses, so I'm just going to stick with Fire of Hatred for now. Gold tier has one of the best fitted skills for this hero's skill kit in my opinion, and that's going to be Swift Victory. You will start to hear me repeat specific skills like I said in my last video, but the neat thing about Magnum Quest is each hero based off their skill kit may be better suited one way over another. I think it's a really interesting feature and it adds a lot of diversity in how you build your heroes. The reason why Swift Victory is perfect for Fang is because of that ultimate shield I mentioned. He will have a much easier time staying above 50% HP, especially being a melee hero, so he's up close and personal with the enemies compared to a ranged like Winden. Getting 4 points of critical hit, meaning 40%, is massive. That would have been 2 crit slots on a gold rune, which you can now use for more damage optimization on your runes, such as like crit damage or physical damage ink are examples. Now number 3 and number 4, this goes back to what I said at the beginning with Cinia and Ekra when talking about Winden. After his bronze tier is done, you can work into one of these 2 heroes. This depends on what you need for progression. If it's damage, I would go for Ekra. If it's support buffs, then I would go for Cinia since she's used everywhere. However, I will say Ekra, I feel doesn't need a lot of star map investment since she steals attack and she can do a lot of damage that way. The stronger the enemies, the stronger she becomes. If Ekra, well, she's got her protege skill that I mentioned before, steals attack and lots of area damage burns. Now personally, I feel these take too much time to ramp up, and by the time I see something, my heroes are dead. So unfortunately, where I use her the most is the Fortress Dungeon. I need quick damage, so that's why I prefer Winden as my top Fortress Intel hero and would pick her situationally. I'm not going to go into key features for her star map because I honestly stopped at bronze tier, but it has your typical active skills like many heroes I've mentioned before, like Domino Effect, Fury of War, Swift Victory. It all depends on your playstyle and what you lack. And then if Cinia, now I actually haven't really invested heavily into any support heroes yet besides working on their bronze tier. Harry is considered a tank and not support, so if you're wondering, hello Giraffe, I've seen your Harry in your videos, he's maxed out. Well, it's different. As a free-to-play or low spender, heck, even a Giraffe spender, it's very hard for me to recommend investing into support heroes star map due to how expensive it is. As I said in the Forest video, you definitely get back more return on, say, DPS boss heroes. So she's one of the best energy buffers in the game and why she's a must-have for boss setups. On top of providing energy, she buffs your 2 highest attack allies and gives an initial shield to the back row to block an attack. This is super useful for preventing, let's say, an enemy fair's pull. I just wanted to quickly go over some key features of her star map. So number 1, because her attack buff is based off her percentage of her own attack, I would suggest focusing the attack stat. And then for number 2, for her gold tier, she also has enhanced therapy, but once again, it's not as effective as Harry due to his being procced off his ultimate. It's more similar to Winden. The reason is her ultimate is not considered a buff. She's just distributing her energy, while Royal Bestowal, I think I'm saying that right, is definitely a buff. So she won't be proccing this nearly as much. However, combining her enhanced therapy alongside Harry's enhanced therapy, I would assume this would be a decent damage boost regardless. And then finally, number 5, we have Ilya. This would be my first strength hero in this list. Now, I can't actually suggest to take him to gold in regards to if it's worth it or not because I haven't yet. So my knowledge is minimal, but I would at least suggest to finish his bronze tier. After that, personally, like Fang and the agility tokens, I would say to save your strength tokens due to lack of options. If Arthur ever gets a buff, I would say I'd be more inclined to invest into him. Reasons why I have Ilya as my top Fortress Strength hero is because, well, he becomes very much needed in higher floor levels of the Fortress Dungeon. And that's not just because Arthur is a paperweight and dies way too fast before even utilizing his skills. Also, I do believe he does quite well in PvP. He just provides a lot of CC, meaning crowd control in terms of his charge, then his stun, so a bunch of enemy disruption and relatively tanky, at least more so than Arthur, and definitely more useful than Bill. So key features of his star map, bronze tier has Armor of Confusion, which is an awesome skill. That reduces accuracy of enemies when being attacked, and because he charges in, he's going to get focused and be surrounded. I think this is more valuable than Weakening Touch because he's still going to be getting attacked, it's just less, while Armor of Confusion can allow him to basically not get hit. Just remember this though, if taking that skill, I'd have a mix of both attack ER and hit ER to compensate for that energy loss. For at gold tier, at first glance, I see Sound Preparation, which I think will be super helpful and my go-to if I ever choose to take him to gold for pushing content, because you are always going to be at a level disadvantage, so that's going to be a permanent damage reduction buff. Just like the Ascension list, comment down below if you would invest differently. Hopefully this helps players out in regards to your decision making. The other factions are on the way. As always, thanks for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe for future videos, and stay tuned for the next one.